Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a scenario that literally haunts DevOps and automation developers. We're going to look at why passing every single development test absolutely does not guarantee a production-ready authentication workflow. We'll be doing a deep dive on what happens when you pair CAPTCHA-AI with Auth.js, and how the source material tells us to bulletproof that integration. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the core paradox that so many teams run headfirst into. The challenge is detected, a valid response comes back, and your CAPTCHA provider reports 100% success. But then, total silence. The Auth.js Credentials Provider just quietly fails to create a session. Your CAPTCHA worked perfectly, but your actual login failed. The real question isn't whether the provider is happy, it's whether the authenticated session was actually created. To fix this, we're going to use the login framework as our architectural roadmap. We'll cover the false success trap, latency and outcomes, guardrails and identity, ownership and economics, the top mistakes to avoid, and finally, the end-to-end metric. Section 1. The false success trap and why tokens aren't enough. The absolute most common trap when integrating CAPTCHA-AI with Auth.js is grabbing a token from the provider and just assuming the job is done. A CAPTCHA integration can work perfectly in a happy path demo, but the moment it runs unattended in CI or in cron jobs or behind an internal queue, it can fall apart. This quote really hits the nail on the head. Solve success and workflow success are entirely different metrics. This is exactly why your dashboard might look completely green and healthy, while your actual users, background queues, or automated workers remain completely locked out. We just cannot treat CAPTCHA success as login success. Moving on to Section 2, Latency and Outcomes, the L and O of our login checklist. So when you're dealing with latency boundaries, you absolutely cannot just rely on average response times for your provider request, polling, and authentication. Relying on averages is a recipe for duplicate attempts, failed jobs, and, well, a barrage of late-night support tickets. Instead, you need exact boundaries. The sweet spot recommended by the source is to submit the task, wait exactly 15 seconds before your first poll, check every 5 seconds, and implement a hard stop at 120 seconds per task. This keeps your timeline totally predictable. Next up is outcomes. You've got to separate the returned response from the actual created session. Looking at these KPIs, keeping first solve latency under 25 seconds, aiming for a solver success rate of at least 95%, and ensuring an end-to-end acceptance of at least 95% post-token. It's so valuable to wire these specific metrics right into your existing application dashboards. If you aren't measuring the gap between a solved task and a successful workflow, you won't spot regressions until things are actively breaking. All right, Section 3, Guardrails and Identity, the G&I of login. Let me ask you this. What actually happens when an authentication workflow crosses serverless functions or browser workers? Usually, this is where integrations snap. Infinite retries are super dangerous here because they hide real defects in the code and burn through your account balances really fast. You have to establish guardrails. Cap retries at exactly 3 attempts with exponential backoff, and only use them for temporary network interruptions. Never retry repeatedly for malformed parameters, expired challenges, or broken sessions. Now for identity and session continuity. Between triggering the challenge, applying the solve, and completing the Auth.js login action, it is absolutely crucial that all 3 of these steps remain inside the exact same browser context, HTTP client and cookie jar. So the crucial point here is that moving a token between one worker that created the challenge and a totally different worker that submits it, that is literally the #1 cause of post-solve rejection. You have to keep it in the same session, or Auth.js will reject the login even if the CAPTCHA succeeds. A token that arrives too late or arrives without the original browser session state is essentially useless. Section 4. Ownership and Economics. The N for named ownership. At the end of the day, someone has to own the complete authentication outcome. Adding CAPTCHA isn't just an API call, it adds latency, retry costs, and a completely new failure boundary to your app. So ask yourself, who handles provider incidents? Who investigates session failures? What's the manual fallback if the system goes down? And how much does each accepted solve actually cost? Wrong parameter loops are massive cost killers, but a well-monitored dashboard will actually drop your cost per accepted solve remarkably fast. Just a quick but very serious aside here.
This highly reliable workflow is specifically engineered for owned, client-authorized, or contractually permitted environments only. It's all about building robust automation for applications or systems that you have explicit permission to interact with.
Section 5. Top mistakes to avoid. Let's do a rapid-fire troubleshooting breakdown. The absolute biggest mistake developers make when putting this into production, grouping every single failure under one generic off-failed error. If you lump an empty account balance in with a lost cookie mismatch, you're going to spend hours debugging the totally wrong part of your stack. Please separate them out into specific actionable items. Invalid inputs, provider errors, timeouts, session mismatches, and downstream rejections are all distinct issues. Finally, Section 6, the end-to-end metric. We've covered latency, outcomes, guardrails, identity, and named ownership. But what is the ultimate measure of success here? It's your true North Star metric, the end-to-end authentication completion rate. I can't stress this enough. An available API absolutely does not mean an available login flow. The only thing that truly matters to the user and the business is whether that authenticated session was actually created at the very end of the pipeline. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. The first missing outcome metric, undefined session owner, or uncontrolled retry path will usually reveal the biggest production risk. I'd highly encourage you to open up your code editor today and review just one of your Auth.js authentication workflows using the login checklist. You might be surprised at the hidden risks you uncover. Thanks for exploring this with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.